Hello, my name is T Hat, and welcome to my new podcast, A Talk With. I will be talking with some interesting people about life. Well, whatever that means for them. We'll talk about things that will make you laugh, make you cry, it might make you question what you believe in, and we'll have some fun along the way. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to A Talk With, where I talk to some interesting people, and I can't do that without talking to my friend Nahani Meuse. Nahani, how are you?
I'm good, Travis. How are you?
I'm good. So, basically, this season, we've been talking about what life means to you. Like, what are your goals? What are your, I don't know, what are your preferences for life? What are your I can't think. Anyway, so I pose that question to you. What are your priorities? What is life like for you?
Well, it's kind of fluid, right? I mean, if you'd asked me the question, 10 years ago, my goals and my priorities were pretty singular, focusing just mainly on my son. But now, as I've gotten into my 30s, I kind of swerved a bit in my career and moved from healthcare into clinical healthcare and social work, and have gotten behind some causes that really mean a lot to me. So one of my big philosophies in life is to leave things better than you found it, whether that's a friendship, a relationship, the planet. And so now my priorities are pretty much doing what I can to help people and animals. I changed the work and went from strictly healthcare into health and social work. And so I've championed a couple of causes with homelessness and the dual diagnosis population, with mental health and substance use, because I'd struggled with it myself. So now I live in New England, and I run and operate homeless shelters and dual diagnosis outreach clinics for the second largest city in all of New England. And then in my free time, I run a dog rescue. So I'm helping people during the day, dogs during the night, and just trying to do my part to help folks that have fallen down or been neglected and abused by society, their owners, whatever, and trying to leave the world a better place than I found it.
Right, and that's great work that's needed in society today, and especially for the homeless population, the houseless, especially for animals, pets. Um, I can't think of a cause that I haven't been behind that involves homeless people and animals. Um, but
And it's at epidemic proportions, and even prior to the COVID pandemic, I grew up where you did, in central Illinois. And I think the entire time there was one group of people in our town of about 30,000 that was homeless, and we all knew with the bike, right? And we all did what our parents raised, to buy the man a coffee, offer him a bottle of water on a hot summer day. But there weren't many folks that you saw, not in the town that we grew up in. And so when I moved to the cities, throughout my 20s, and saw just the enormous numbers of folks that are on the street, and I'm like, why is this? And some of it boils down to basic economics. Take somebody who's disabled, right? You're expected to live on $700 or $800 a month. Well, if you live in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, maybe you could rent for that, but nowhere else in this country are you going to be able to afford rent, utilities, groceries, healthcare on $700 or $800 a month. And, our senior citizen population, the baby boomer generation, are aging. And many of them don't have the option to age in place because they just can't afford the very basics. Then we've got kids coming out of school with all kinds of student debt. And that's before we add in, yesterday was the anniversary of 9/11. And a lot of people's lives were changed on that day. Many folks, those in my family and yours, served in a never-ending war after that horrific day and came home, maybe not with the physical scars that everybody can see, but they're mentally wounded and not getting the care they need. And that kind of distances them from the rest of society. And then our just raging mental health care or lack thereof in this country. We've got so many people suffering and struggling on the streets in every town across the United States. It's heartbreaking to see, and I could no longer see it and not offer to help with it.
Yeah, like where we grew up in Lincoln, you really didn't see a lot of homelessness. But when I moved to Decatur, they're on every corner. And it's like, I wish I could help.
Yeah.
But I'm one of those that you described, being on Social Security, that can't even afford to live myself, let alone help somebody else.
Right. And I try to tell folks, you don't fix money problems with money, right? You don't fix money problems with money. It's all about policy and advocacy. When people tell me, I don't think, I would get behind the cause, but I don't even make enough to get through my day to day. I tell folks it's not the money that's needed. We've got the money. We've got the financial resources. The issue is they're not earmarked in the right direction. I've got a big problem with the narrative. Many people, particularly if they don't grow up in a metro area, they think that people are homeless because they choose to be. They say, oh, they're homeless because they're drug addicts. No. Maybe they are. Maybe they are, but the two are not synonymous. Folks who are homeless because they simply can't make ends meet. There are others who maybe made a mistake in their early 20s, like many of us did, and have felony convictions, so they can't get a landlord to rent to them. So substance use is a part of it, but change that narrative and getting people to see nobody chooses to be homeless. We had veterans. I had a teacher. She teaches in the Worcester Public School, of Worcester employee, and she doesn't make enough to pay market rate rent and came home to my homeless shelter every night to sleep safely so she wasn't outside. We had a fireman, a first responder, who would get up and go meet the needs of and save the lives of other inhabitants of our city on a daily basis. And he had to come home at night to a shelter. I mean, it's not... These are not throwaway people. These are not, they chose this and they're all drug addicts. It's just not the reality.
Yeah, it's sad. And I feel empathy for these people because, like you said, nobody chooses to be homeless. That's not a choice. That's just something that happens when you can't make ends meet. And
absolutely,
3/4 of this country would be homeless. What am I trying to say? They would be homeless if they missed like two paychecks.
Yes, absolutely. I tell that to people all the time, particularly those who are judgmental and buy into the stereotypes that this is a choice. I point out to them, you yourself are one accident, one catastrophe, one family death, one loss of a job, one paycheck away from homelessness. Literally, more than 3/4 of our country, it is that precarious financially for them. Most people don't have an emergency fund. Most people don't have the luxury of having a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a grandma, or grandpa who could bail them out if something happened. All it takes is one injury and you can't work for a couple of weeks. Where's that rent money coming from?
Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing with animals. It's like there are people that will house these animals, house these pets until it doesn't suit their living
Correct.
situation. And
Yes.
then what happens to that pet?
Yes.
And that's where you
So-
come in.
I grew up with a dachshund. That was our family dog. We got him when I was 3. His name was Cinnamon. He was amazing. And he lived until I was in college. And I just connected to that dog on so many levels. That was it. It was a one and done. I was addicted to the breed. I wanted to have them, to love them, to breed them. That was it for me.
Yeah.
And I started rescuing, and the first was Howard. Remember Howard?
Yes, I remember Howard.
I brought Howard in, and just such a sad little story. He was covered in push pins, like thumbtacks, stuck all over his body. So obese he couldn't walk because he'd been fed nothing but table scraps his whole life. And just a broken, sad dog. If he'd heard a noise, he'd hide. If you went to pet him, he ducked. It broke my heart, and I made it my mission to give that dog the best little life he could have. And from Howard on, every dachshund that I took in was a rescue. You know, whether they came from puppy mills that feed into those high-priced, mall pet stores, or they were in hoarding situations, or the ASPCA got them. So I've done it now for almost 20 years, Dachshund Rescue. But just when COVID had started, many folks who had adopted animals were reaching out saying, Nahani, I can't afford to feed my dog. I'm going to have to bring the dog back. I can't feed it. And these were people who'd adopted from me 5, 6, 7 years ago. But now because of the pandemic and having to be home, they had no way to feed their families. And so in my mind, the dog was happy and well cared for, and this was a financial hardship. I didn't want the dog to lose its home. So what I started doing was a little kibble kitchen. And I started telling folks, if you can't feed your dog or your cat, your iguana, whatever it is, let me know and I will deliver pet food to you. And so I started doing that just for my adopters. And then I posted it on a mutual aid site for the entire city of Worcester. And the responses that I received were astronomical. I went from, dropping off dog and cat food to 5 or 6 folks a week to over 120 every week. And I was working 2 jobs and funding it myself. People would buy dog food and, donate it to me so I could help feed people's pets because I just didn't want any more of them displaced. And then we saw a huge uptick of adoptions during COVID from shelters all over the country because people were home and they felt they had time for the pets. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is as folks have returned back to in-person work versus full remote, they feel they don't have time for the pets. And so they're dumping them. And I try to tell people, whether you're home or not, the dog is far happier being in your home than it is in a shelter. Dogs on average sleep 12 to 16 hours a day. It's fine for him to be home while you're at work for 8 hours. It's far better than being dumped in a shelter and wondering what he did or she did and why they're not good enough to have their family. And folks see them as property, like you said, until it doesn't suit their lifestyle. So I've got a dog, people have bred it and made puppies and made thousands of dollars. But now, she's 4 or 5. She can't have more puppies. I'm going to dump her. Or, I moved and the new landlord doesn't want pets. I'm done. Or I got a new boyfriend and he has allergies. I got to get rid of the dog. Or I had a baby and I'm busy. I got to get rid of the dog. It doesn't work like that. These are sentient beings. They have feelings. They have souls. They have hearts. And every dog that I take in is so broken by that, not understanding why they're disposable. And then, God forbid, don't even mention the horrific abuse situations that we see. I've got a new little guy I just took in 3 weeks ago. Hartford, Connecticut called me and said, we've got a dachshund from a bad situation. Can you take him? And I said, of course. And I drove down and I got him. And I noticed over the next couple of days as he's wandering around and getting comfortable here, that he walks with a very odd gait, kind of wobbly, almost like he was, off center or intoxicated, really. He wobbles like a little drunk man. And his eyes are very, very dilated all the time. So I took him into our vet just to get a baseline. And I said, is it his back? Because dachshunds have back problems. And she did some testing and said, no, it's not his back. This is neurological. I'd like to get an image of his head. And she took an image of his head and she came back in and she had tears rolling down her face. And she said, I can't even speak, but I want to show you the imagery. And she put up these x-rays, and this little 13-year-old dachshund has 7 skull fractures, all in various stages of healing.
Oh my
and
God.
This is a dog that's 9-10 pounds. They're all in various stages of healing, so this wasn't like one catastrophic accident. And a skull is a very hard bone to break. Somebody used a weapon, whether a ball, bat, a brick, God knows what, with such force on so many different occasions that they broke this little dog's skull 7 times. Pardon my language. It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Like, how could you? It's like somebody who abuses a child or the elderly. How could you?
Oh my God.
And this little dog, he's so eager and hungry for affirmation. Yeah, I mean, he walks up to everybody he sees and he wags his tail and he just hopes beyond hope that somebody will pat him gently or tell him he's a good boy. I mean, if human beings had broken my skull 7 times, I would bite every human being I saw. And this dog is just so laid back and hungry for affection that he just wanders over to you, and then you go to reach for him and he ducks slightly, but he doesn't move his body. He wants human touch that isn't negative. And it just breaks my heart. How do people do this?
What would make somebody want to abuse an animal like that? I could not tell you.
Right. And the internet has brought us so many wonderful things, knowledge at your fingertips. You can check, forecasts. You can make plane trips. I mean, there are so many things the internet has done that is phenomenal. But some of it is just such a disgusting detriment to this society. Like my 15-year-old son, when he heard about Tiger's injuries, he wasn't even shocked. It didn't freak him out like it did me and the vet. And I said, Jason, this is terrible. And he goes, I know, but it's on TikTok all the time. And I said, what? And he literally went on to this TikTok thing. And within a couple of seconds, there are hundreds of videos. He typed in pet abuse. Hundreds of videos. People recording themselves, shaking cats, putting a turtle in a microwave, hooking a firework onto a small dog. I mean, just absolutely disgusting, horrendous, cruel behavior. But it's become so normal. It's desensitizing an entire generation. And they're not understanding, because it's on the internet, so it's cool. Everybody else does it. It's like the stupid challenges that they do.
Oh my God!
But it's desensitizing our children to the horrors of the reality of animal abuse.
That just wow. That just blew my mind. A turtle in a microwave?
Yeah, a turtle in a microwave. I mean, there were just such disgusting video. People putting newborn kittens in like a pillowcase and chucking it over an overpass. Like, just really disgusting, heartless, cruel behavior. If you have an animal and you truly can't care for it, or you want to do something terrible to it, please, dear God, don't. Call your local shelter. Call an ASPCA. Go on Google and type in dog rescue near me. They will connect you to somebody like me who will get that animal and provide it the care and love it needs and get it adopted into a loving home. Like, there is never, ever a reason or an excuse or justification to harm an animal. Certainly not for likes on social media. That's it. It's just disgusting. And in many places, it's prosecutable. I wish it was everywhere.
Yeah, it should be. So my question to you is, how can we in Decatur help?
Be their voice. You know, and I tell people all the time, there's only one thing on this planet that will love you more than it loves itself other than your mother. And that's your pet. Whether it's a dog, whether it's a cat, you know, people have agendas, right? Even your best friend, even your lifelong partner, your husband, your wife, every human being has an agenda, and it is typically self-serving. Even even the Pope, it's typically self-serving. Often it mirrors in service of others, but at the end of the day, it's self-preservation. An animal is not that way. They're not wired that way. An animal will never lie to you. An animal will never betray you. An animal would never walk away from you. I mean, we've seen it, right? We've seen the viral videos of, of a service member dying and their partner dog laying at the foot of the coffin. Like, an animal, all they want is to please you and to be a companion. They're selfless creatures. But the one thing that they can't do is speak for themselves. And sometimes when they use their body language, they're misunderstood, right? Because a scared dog can growl. It doesn't mean the dog's going to bite you. It doesn't mean the dog's vicious. It means he's scared. Yeah. So what we can do as human beings to advocate for them is to be their voice, to amplify the voices of the hundreds and thousands of advocates and rescuers across this country, saying enough is enough. Do not shop. Do not pay for an animal. Adopt. Please adopt. You can find any breed. You can find purebred anything in a shelter in this country. One of the biggest shelters that I pull from is a huge 5-county shelter down on the border of Texas and Mexico. That one shelter alone euthanizes more than 200 dogs and cats every day.
Oh, my God.
One shelter every day.
Oh, wow.
Thankfully, here in New England, we cannot euthanize for space. Animals up here are not euthanized for space, but in many of our southern states, they are euthanized for space. They're euthanized for breed restriction. There are bullies and chihuahuas killed every day all over this country. There are cats. I tell folks, if you want a pet, do not go to a breeder. I can find you that purebred with papers French bulldog in a shelter. I can find you that purebred with papers Great Dane in a shelter. Any animal, do not shop, opt to adopt.
Exactly.
And for God's sake, spay and neuter your pets. If money's tight and you can't afford it, reach out to the ASPCA or a rescue. We will literally pay to have your pet spayed or neutered to control the pet population, because there are far more pets than there are willing homes or safe homes. So every time somebody creates another breed, another litter of a breeded dog to sell it, okay, you've got 6 puppies and you sold 6 puppies, but guess what? That means 6 puppies in the shelter get killed.
Yeah.
Don't shop. Spay and neuter your pets. And if you see animal cruelty, be their voice.
Mm-hmm.
Be their voice. If you see a dog in a hot car, break the window. Call the police. If your neighbor has a dog tied up in their backyard on a chain year-round, in the snow, in the cold, in the rain, call the ASPCA.
I know when we opted to neuter our 5 cats, we used the APL in Springfield because they were low cost, and the shots only cost us $50.
Exactly. I mean, let's be honest. Financially, everybody's struggling, and it is an added expense to have a pet. But if there are basic things that are needed, like a spay or neuter or vaccines, and you can't afford it, almost everywhere in this country, within 50 miles of where you live, there will be a low cost or an income-based clinic. And if there's not, the ASPCA or even the local shelter will often do it for free.
Yes. Okay. Well, after all that serious talk, let's have a little fun, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay. Um, Now, what I've been ending every show with is an Am I the A-hole situation from Reddit. Now, Nahani, you know that I've always advocated for people talking to their friends about their partners and not going to the internet, right?
Correct.
But these people can't help themselves, and so they don't want to inquire their friends about their issues. They want the internet's point of view. And like I said last week, everybody has an opinion, doesn't mean that their opinion is correct.
Right.
Okay, so here we go with an am I the a-hole here? Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she doesn't understand because she's never been pregnant? Here's the situation. I was adopted by my mother. She was incapable of conceiving a child after a hysterectomy due to a horrible accident. She grieved her uterus and biological children, so it's not a subject we bring up. My fiance is 27 weeks pregnant and has diagnosed hypermesis. Okay, I can't pronounce that. Anyway, we just got a diagnosis finally after no one was listening too. And we are trying to get her body back on track, but some things are too much. We had my mother and father over yesterday night for dinner. My mother wanted to teach my fiance how to cook an authentic Italian meal. After many apologies, my fiance said she couldn't take the smell and went upstairs. My mother is short-tempered. She's old-fashioned Italian and is very strict and judgmental. She began to go on and on about how you never treat a guest that way, especially an in-law, and how she had driven 40 minutes to come do this. I tried to explain the situation, and she insisted my fiance was being overdramatic. So I said, you wouldn't understand because you've never been pregnant. My mom burst into tears and they left. My dad called me and he agreed with me, but I needed to apologize because my mom had locked herself in the bedroom for the night crying. I, of course, feel bad for my mom, but she doesn't understand. Am I the a-hole?
Oh my goodness, what a loaded situation. First, hyperemesis gravidarum is a woman who has extreme morning sickness. Extreme morning sickness. So it doesn't just last the first trimester. It's nonstop vomiting, typically throughout the pregnancy. It can be dangerous to mom and baby because obviously nutritional needs are not met because everything you swallow comes right back up. So it is definitely a difficult diagnosis. Thankfully, we've got wonderful drugs on the market, Zofran being one of them, that can mitigate some of those troubles. Oh my goodness. I think he's right for defending his wife, but the cheap shot to do it, not necessary.
Yeah.
I don't believe I would say you don't understand because you've never been pregnant. I think I would say if you've not had the diagnosis of hyperemesis gravidarum, you don't know. Every human being knows what it is to vomit, right? But not every human being knows what it is to always vomit and not be able to stop. I think him saying that to mom, I can see her locking herself in her room and being upset. Yeah, I mean, you know, but we struggled for years to have a viable pregnancy. We did the fertility treatments, and you already feel alone enough. And like, my God, what's wrong with me? Because you see other people who don't necessarily want children, have 5, 6, 7, and you just want one, and you just can't have it. It's a very negative emotional battle. But at the end of the day, is giving birth or going through pregnancy what makes a mother? I say not. I mean, my mother and I had a very tumultuous relationship, and to be quite frank with you, your mother, though she did not give birth to me, was more of a mother to me than the woman who did. So was my aunt. You know, it wasn't my mother that taught me to cook. It was Mama Carolyn. It wasn't my mother who taught me how to apply my makeup. It was Mama Carolyn. I think he's an asshole. I'm sorry. I am all for defending your wife, but you didn't need the cheap shot low blow to your mom to do it.
Yeah, I agree. There were other things that he could have said that would have gotten the point across, but just to be blunt like that and be like,
absolutely,
you've never been pregnant, so you wouldn't understand. That is, he already explains it's a touchy subject, so why would he visit that subject?
Right. If you know it's a touchy subject, and maybe because he said his mom's, Italian and hard-headed, maybe he felt the only way to quickly end the situation was to go that low. But again, that doesn't speak to your mom's character. That speaks to yours. That you would willingly hurt somebody in your life to protect somebody else in your life. That's not okay. Your family. At the end of the day, what is family? That woman may not have given birth to you, but has she raised you as her own? Has she provided your life, your support, your encouragement, your education? Clearly she had to have raised you better than to think that you take a cheap shot at somebody who was there who never had to be.
Right.
Yep,
I agree.
Oh.
Okay, so we come to the end of the show. I want to thank Nahani for coming in this week.
Thanks so much for having me.